Growing up and through much of my life, when I thought of the sun-soaked beaches of California, I often thought of what would be deemed paradise. I thought of Hollywood, I thought of the Walk of Fame, I thought of all of that cool stuff that I watched growing up. From watching action movies growing up, such as Beverly Hills Cop, to silly movies such as Malibu's Most Wanted, we always had this perception in our minds that California was this golden paradise, this majestic place. However, when many folks get to California, what you see is something quite different. When I actually walked that Walk of Fame in Hollywood, as the streets were littered with filth, homeless people were everywhere sleeping around it with trash all over the place. It was not what I had seen growing up on TV.
Troublesome homeless encampment in Hollywood is starting to grow again after the city recently cleared it out. Good evening. This is the KTLA 5 News at 5:30. I'm Cher Calvin.
And I'm Micah Ullman. Neighbors say they have witnessed people buying and selling drugs. There have been break-ins, and at least one man was attacked.
Tonight, those neighbors are sharing their frustrations.
Today, it's no secret that California is absolutely in shambles. From the wildfires to the looting to the crime, we're going to get into the top 7 reasons why folks are fleeing California for other and more desirable states. So let's get started. Number 1, when you talk about California, you absolutely have to talk about crime. When you talk about crime and you talk about California, you absolutely have to talk about Proposition 47. What is Proposition 47? Well, that would be the famous law where the government made it virtually legal to steal anything under $950 some odd. Now, it goes without saying how absolutely absurd this is and the consequences that followed thereafter. The videos that we've all seen, the viral videos of folks just walking in, shoplifting, walking back out.
You hear that after winning voter approval by more than 68% in last month's election, Prop 36 is now in effect.
It's simply not worth it for a security guard to try to risk their life to go after this, only for the government to not even prosecute the folks. Think about it. If you were a security guard or you worked at one of these places, why on earth would you go confront somebody, risk your life, when they're going to be let back out on the street to do again anyway? They're not going to face any consequences for their actions. Therefore, it's silly for security to even step in and do everything.
Enjoy the ride.
So the result of Proposition 47, as we know, was catastrophic. California is already talking about and fighting back against this. The residents are sick of it, and it has led to absolute chaos there. And while these actions weren't technically legal, the fact of the matter is no one was getting punished for it. And to this day, in some places in California, no one is still getting punished for it. So it's costing business owners money, it's costing them resources. They say that the average that it's costing some of these businesses is in the thousands monthly. You have to think, that is then costing jobs, as these people could allocate that money for new hires, training, and so forth. But instead, they're getting their margins taken right before their eyes. And that brings me to my next point, which is number 2, the cost of living and the cost of doing business. When you look at the average home price, the average cost at the grocery store, the average cost at a restaurant, the average cost for a drink out with the wife for dinner or something, and when you compare that in California to, say, the state of Tennessee, calling it a stark contrast would be a gross understatement. Californians pay a 13.5% state income tax. Can you believe that? 13.5% of your money? This doesn't even include federal taxation, property taxes, sales taxes, and so on. However, here in Tennessee, we have a grand total of a state income tax of 0. It costs a lot of money to live in California, not just with everyday goods, but also being taxed on them as well as being taxed on your income. I'm shocked they don't make you pay taxes on your taxes. Like, we got a 10% tax for your 13.5% tax that you pay. And then some other dude is over there in the corner like, hey, can we put a tax on that tax? It's like, well, put me down for no. In contrast, the state of Tennessee was ranked in the top three most desirable places when it comes to the affordability to do business. Next up is going to be the choosing of the environment over people. I'm not against environmental efforts, but calling some of this stuff absolutely absurd just needs to be done. Let me give you an example of this, okay? When I was an over-the-road truck driver, I was in California and we were picking up a load of produce. My wife and I drove as a team. We drove a refrigerated unit, which we commonly called a reefer unit. I was parked as we were taking our 10-hour break when I get a knock on my window. And I said, well, it's really hot out, it's California or something like that. He proceeded to ask me a couple questions. One of those questions included, is anybody else in the vehicle? So I thought, okay, that's a normal question to ask somebody. Hey, my wife is in the back in the sleeper cab taking a nap or whatever, okay? So the officer was like, okay, is there any animals in the vehicle? To which I responded, nope, don't have any animals, sir, just my wife. Then the officer proceeded to write me a ticket. And I asked him, okay, well, why did you ask about pets? Like, what was the motive behind that? Just got small talk with the officer. He then told me that if my wife is in a vehicle and I'm idling, I get a ticket for environmental reasons. But if I have a cat, a dog, a gerbil, a fish, whatever in there, totally cool. No law's been broken. I can idle the truck, same whatever, going to the environment, and nothing is wrong with that. That is totally okay because the dog matters more than my wife. I'm sorry, but no, you're wrong. That is absolutely absurd. That is complete insanity. So when that is your view of environmentalism, I'm sorry, we just have a different view of environmentalism. Now, this wasn't that cop's fault. He was just out doing his job. I can't blame that guy one bit. However, the government that caused them to have to go to somebody and do that, no thank you. You can keep your place over there. All good. Those fleeing California, come to Tennessee. We welcome you with open arms as long as you don't want to enact laws like that. Please never do that at all. First of all, I pray and feel for those affected by the fires in California. I love y'all, and I want you to know you and your family are in my prayers. And we welcome you here in Tennessee. That's first and foremost. And while I cannot act like I know what caused the fire, one thing that we are sure of is from the dead brush being left in the wilderness to the dry reservoirs when they need water, empty fire hydrants, and some of their firefighting equipment actually being shipped over to other countries. In addition to the assistant fire chief actually saying this.
Was your budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025 cut?
I can tell you, I'm going to even go back further than that. Again, since day one, we've identified huge gaps in regard to our service delivery and our ability from our firefighters, boots on the ground, to do their jobs. Since day one, this is my third budget as we're going into 25-26. What I can tell you is we are still understaffed, we're still under-resourced, and we're still underfunded. So with that, whether it's 7 million, 10 million.
But was the budget cut, Chief?
Yes, it was cut. And it did impact our ability to provide service.
Or you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
It seems like the average Californian has got the bad end of the deal here while the government continues to mismanage, spend, and make bad decisions with virtually no repercussion. This has affected their economy, it's now affected their environment, and it's definitely affected the great people of California who deserve better. Every place that has forestry or something to catch on fire is eventually going to have a fire. Here in Tennessee, we have had fires. Gatlinburg had fires. But you know what we also had was water for the fires. We had fire hydrants that worked. We had fire trucks that could go do the job instead of 24 or so being parked for maintenance issues when they should be in use. And you would think that a state that taxes their people so much would have so much of this to offer because they have more money to invest in this stuff. But instead, they've wastefully spent, and they spent money on things they shouldn't have. So here in Tennessee, we have a lot of forestry. We love the environment. We love our creeks. We love our rivers. We love our lakes. We love the forestry. We love everything about this great state of Tennessee. We love what God placed here for us to use. However, we also understand that we are stewards of it and that we are to take care of it. But let's not get absolutely off our rockers with that stuff either. There's no need to pass laws that are just based on sensationalism and emotionalism. hey, don't throw trash, don't pollute rivers, stuff like that. Totally makes sense. And that transitions into my next point, which is regulation. California is the most regulated place ever. It is one of the many reasons real estate is so expensive there. Many folks think real estate is just that expensive there because it's desirable. Well, at one point it probably was. That's kind of fleeting as we see. However, that's only one of the reasons. And yes, that is a valid reason. That certainly is part of the equation there. However, one of the reasons it is so expensive to build property in California is due to the government regulation, which folks can get tied up for years. Builders can get tied up for a very long time with that. A bunch of legal battles, a bunch of government regulation, red tape they got to go through. It costs a ton to build in California, and that is why so many folks are pulling their businesses out of there. Builders are reluctant to build there. California needs more housing. Obviously, they have more homeless people than probably anybody. That in America anyway. That being said, part of that is due to their climate, some things they cannot control. Another part of that is due to the fact that housing is so expensive there. It's already expensive everywhere, y'all. There's no questioning that. However, far more expensive in California compared to most places for sure. Speaking of housing, that brings us to our next point, which is that homelessness is absolutely out of control in the state of California. Now, some of that, they just can't control, y'all. I'll be real with you. There's a reason in New York that like 5% of the homeless people or something like that sleep outside. The conditions are too hard. You just can't sleep out in a tent in the middle of a New York winter. So in California, SoCal especially, it's the desert. It's year-round. You don't have to deal with the harsh conditions. So folks end up going there. They migrate kind of that area that homeless folks do. That's one part of it. That certainly is. But on the other hand, placing tents all around where you have places like Skid Row and stuff to where it just becomes normalized, and then folks are given things like alcohol in certain places of California. Homeless people can actually go get free alcohol in a certain spot in California. They can get needles that are clean, and I certainly don't want anybody using dirty needles. I'm not saying that at all. But this open air use of illicit drugs mixed with the homeless people being left on the streets, it's like a cat chasing its tail. The problem is just never solved, and it's only getting worse. California has spent $24 billion on their homeless problem just recently, yet added 30,000 more homeless people to their population. This is a huge problem. So you have homeless encampments and homeless people right near schools, right near businesses, right near restaurants where no one can do anything about it, and the police aren't even empowered to go clean up the streets. And even their efforts to combat homelessness, which seems like a valiant effort, they've gone about it the complete wrong way and been very wasteful with their spending. For example, in the city of Santa Monica, they spent $122 million for homeless people to build small homes for the homeless. That sounds like a good idea. I won't get into if you believe tax dollars should pay for that or not, but we'll just pretend for a second that everybody was on board with that for the sake of this argument. That's not even the absurd point that I'm trying to make here. This is. They spent $122 million to build 122 homes for homeless people. They already own the land, y'all. The Santa Monica already owned this land, and they spent $122 million to build 122 homes. So with already owning the dirt, it cost them $1 million per home to build 122 homes, totaling $122 million. To show you a stark contrast to that, the state of Tennessee runs our budget with a budget surplus. And the last would be sanctuary cities. California is almost synonymous with these sanctuary cities, and that is the last reason why many folks are fleeing the state of California.
Sanctuary city, even if he is legal here, we cannot call ICE and report him.
But you still have to report that, right?
No, we don't, because it's a sanctuary city. We do not report illegal undocumented.
So you're gonna let a person who went to prison, he committed a crime in America, who's illegal right now, you're gonna let him go free right now to this elevator?
That's exactly what I'm saying, because we're a sanctuary city.
So if you're illegal, they just let you commit crime.
Can you think of any other reason that folks are fleeing the state of California? Put it in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank y'all for watching. I'm Chris Overbay with United Real Estate Solutions, the blue collar agent, and I can't wait to see y'all on the next video.